Today, let's look at exponents and square roots. This right here is an example of an exponent, 4 to the power of 2. The number on the bottom, the 4, is known as the base, and the small number at the top is called the exponent. Now let's look at this exponent, and how would we solve it? So right here, we know that 4 is our base. The base tells us the number that is going to be multiplied by itself. So right here, 4 is going to be multiplied by itself over and over. It's like repeated multiplication. And the number of times we're going to multiply this 4 by is 2. So we're going to multiply this 4 by itself 2 times because our exponent indicates how many times our base is going to be multiplied. So we have 4 times 4, and this gives us 16. So this lets us know that 4 to the power of 2 is equal to 16. Now let's take a look at another example, 2 to the power of 3. To start off, we have to look at the base. So we know the base is 2, which means 2 is going to be repeatedly multiplied by itself. And since the exponent is 3, we know that 2 is going to be multiplied by itself 3 times, 2 times 2 times 2. And this will give us 8. One important thing to note is that 2 to the power of 3 is not 2 times 3. So make sure you don't do 2 times 3, rather you do 2 times 2 times 2. Now let's look at 5 to the power of 1. Well, as usual, we look at the base, and we know the base is 5, so 5 is going to be repeatedly multiplied. But since the exponent is 1, 5 is only going to be multiplied once, which means we're just going to be left with 5. And this tells us that 5 to the power of 1 is equal to 5. This can be applied to any number. So if we have 3 to the power of 1, it'll equal 3. If we have 20 to the power of 1, it'll equal 20. So anything to the power of 1 will equal itself. Now let's look at 4 to the power of 0. Well, we know the base is 4, so we know 4 is going to be repeatedly multiplied. But the exponent is 0. So that may make you think that 4 to the power of 0 is 0, since we're not going to be multiplying 4 at all. Well, it actually equals 1. Anything to the power of 0 equals 1. And this is because 4 to the power of 0 is like saying 4 divided by 4. And we know 4 divided by 4 is going to equal to 1. Now here are a few examples for you to try out. And I encourage you to pause the video and try a few of these examples before we move on. In a few seconds, I'll display the answers, so if you do try them, here are the answers. Now let's take a look at square roots. So this right here shows a square root of 4. As you can see, this symbol right here, which kind of looks like a long division symbol, is a symbol for square root. And the number in the middle, the 4, is a number that is being square rooted. So what is the square root of 4? Well, whenever we're square rooting a number, we're essentially trying to find a number that when multiplied by itself gives you the number in the middle. So what I'm saying is, if we take a number and multiply it by itself, it'll equal 4, and that would be the square root of 4. Now let's take a look at 1. If we do 1 times itself, a number multiplied by itself, does it give us 4? Well, 1 times 1 is not 4, which is why 1 is not the answer. Now let's take a look at 2. If we do 2 times itself, 2 times 2, that gives us 4. And this tells us that the square root of 4 is equal to 2. Now, the number in the middle, 4, is an example of a perfect square. So if we take 3 and multiply it by itself, we're going to get 9. And any number multiplied by itself will give us a number that is a perfect square. So right here, 9 is a perfect square because it can be expressed as a product of two numbers that are the same. So 3 times 3 are the same, which is why 9 is a perfect square. Now here is a list of perfect squares, which would be useful to memorize if we're doing square roots. So as we can see here, 25 can be expressed as 5 times 5. And since 5 is being multiplied by itself, 25 is a perfect square. Now right here, let's take a look at another example, the square root of 81. Now since 81 is a bigger number, well, it could be 8. Let's take a look at 8. If we do 8 times 8, take 8 and multiply by itself, we get 64, which is not 81, so it can't be 8. Now let's take a look at 9. If we take 9 and multiply it by itself, we're going to get 81. 9 times 9 is 81. And this tells us that the square root of 81 is equal to 9. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments below, and they will be answered as soon as possible.